Channel Red Novel Chapter 1561, Once in a Full Moon to reach the level beyond that of a vampire lord. This was a quest that Quinn had for a while now, and he always wondered what were the requirements to complete this quest. Was it increasing his levels, by increasing his blood aura, or by gaining more chi? In a way, whenever he improved any of these things, it seemed like it would push him forward, but he felt as if he was missing something. However, not knowing what that something was, Quinn had no choice but to put it at the back of his mind. When fighting against Graham, Quinn could feel this rise in power as the nest crystal synced with his body. Ever since absorbing the blood crystal throne in the 14th castle, Quinn had more blood aura than his chi. There was an imbalance in power inside him. Mixing both of the powers and balancing was how Quinn could produce the strongest attack possible. However, since one power was more significant than the other, it was almost as if he would have to hold himself back. He had three choices: using an attack with just chi, or using an attack with just blood aura, or lessening the two to combine a strike that wouldn't quite be at its full potential but would have the advantages of one or the other. As the sync rate went up, Quinn could feel that his energy, the chi in his body flowing through him, was reaching the same amount as the blood aura. What was even better was when absorbing the nest crystal and all the pain he had gone through, it had changed his body and somewhat almost upgraded it to the point where now he could handle more chi in his body. This was why he could now use the Demon Tier Gauntlet to absorb even more energy into himself. Obviously, if he got stronger as the sync rate went up, the best thing to do would be to wait for the sync rate to increase, so Quinn had a higher chance of winning this fight. What he didn't expect was to suddenly evolve in the middle of a fight. With each evolution Quinn went through, his body suffered extreme pain, and the process would take some time. In simple words, right now, he was vulnerable. His body was changing whether he wanted to or not, and Quinn had fallen to one knee. There was quite a distance away from Graham as Quinn had used his blue Fang set to get as far away as possible. Damn it, I really can't fight this. Quinn thought as the veins on his neck started to bulge, even being on one knee was painful. Lately, he had been through a lot of changes. Since he had absorbed the nest crystal, he thought it would be the end of his painful days, and he could handle anything. How wrong I was about that, this thing hurts even more. Quinn thought, making a fist and eventually collapsing on the ground completely. Graham, watching this, just didn't understand what was happening at all. Did my attacks actually get through, and he is only feeling the effects now? Or is this a trap? Graham thought. No, this is something else. Not wanting to take any chances, Graham continued to charge ahead. It was time for him to end the fight. Damn it, I can't move, after waiting this whole time, after letting everyone down. Is this really how I'm going to go? Quinn thought. Quinn. A lightning strike crashed right in front of Quinn, and the next second, a man in white robes had appeared. You saved my life, it's now our turn to save yours. Our? Quinn frowned and looked around, only to see that it wasn't just Owen that arrived. The rest of the cursed faction leaders were here as well. And along with them were Mona, Samantha, and the remaining vampire leaders. No, what are you guys doing? Quinn couldn't speak, so he could only speak in his head. He will kill you all, he's too strong. Quinn, we aren't as weak as you think, Owen said as if he could read his thoughts. Genbu, I summon you. Lighting up from his hand, the familiar turtle appeared and immediately showed its back. That won't be enough. Syl stated as he placed his hands on the ground, and a slight shine was seen for a second before becoming completely invisible. Graham soon felt his body crashing into something, and it turned out that Syl had put up a barrier. Still, Graham was strong enough to go through the barrier, but Syl's powers slowed him down significantly. But when Graham reached Genbu, he clenched his fists and threw out a punch on the latter's shell. Purple sparks started to flicker, but the shell was beginning to crack. While still for a moment, though, 3 sets of red blood strings began to coil around Graham from behind. Standing there was the 13th family vampire leader, Lee, with Silver and Fex, who were doing their best to pull Graham's arm and force him back. Still, even with this, the shell soon was cracking and completely shattered, making Genbu disappear back to the familiar world. It would take time before he could be summoned again for help. As Genbu disappeared, Graham punched again, expecting to hit Owen, but there was Nate with his demon tier shield, to his surprise. The momentum of the punch was already moving forward, so Graham was unable to pull back, and his fist landed right in the middle of the shield. Nate felt like he could feel a slight jolt hitting his body, even though he had the shield. This was something he had never felt before, but thankfully everyone's efforts in slowing Graham down so far had worked, and of course, it was Syl who had come up with this plan. The demon tier shield lit up, and everyone got out of the way as they imagined the big explosion would go off around the shield. And that was what exactly happened as a blue energy, larger than any other, shot off from the shield, and there were those that stood behind Nate for support so he could hold the shield properly, the Blade family, Linda and Samantha in their transformed state. The explosions being delivered from the shield were larger than a mountain. One couldn't see the other side opposite the settlement because it was covered in blue energy. All the flowers on the ground were destroyed, crumbled and turned into nothing as eventually, the blue light lit up. The group holding onto the shield were being pushed back even more, but then, when it disappeared, they looked in front of them and could see nothing. Graham wasn't in front of them at all. The others were suspicious. Layla had her sword out, Dennis and the others drew their weapons and had their abilities active as well. Peter, with his lesser whites, and Borden, with his claws, were ready to charge in. They just couldn't believe it was that easy to kill Graham. However, the demon tier shield was meant to produce twice the attack power of its opponent back at them. If there was any item that was perfect for who they were going up against, it was this one. "Is it over?" Borden asked. "I can't see," Syl said, rubbing his eyes, looking tired. "I already used up too much of my powers when going up against the dragon. I've run out of MC cells." "He's not dead, he's definitely not dead," Rattan said. Moments later, they saw a Dalki in the distance. He no longer had any clothes on his body because they were burned away by the explosion. He slowly walked over to the others, and now they could tell he was hurt. His body was wounded, and green blood oozed from certain parts of his body. Which wasn't a good sign with a Dalki. "I never thought, after becoming a 7 spike, I would get hurt by you people, but luckily, I always take precautions. There was a reason why I was a little late," Graham said as he looked up at the sky. "There is something I can do only once a month, and this was the perfect moment. I could kill you all slowly, but why bother with that?" Hearing these words, Nate and Syl remembered. It was then that Graham's muscles started to bulge, and fur began to appear through his body out from on top of his scales. His face was enlarging into a type of a snout and his nostrils were growing bigger as well. "What is happening to him?" Layla asked. "Graham is transforming," Logan replied, remembering the files. Channel Red Novel Chapter 1562, Unstoppable Force. Looking through the information in his head, Logan went through the data he had gathered from Richard Eno. When creating the Dalki, they used all sorts of DNA gathered from humans. It was essential to use DNA humans as the basis because they were trying to create a human blood substitute. After all, the vampires were unable to drink beast or vampire blood, which was why Logan found the fact that what Graham was turning into right now was incredibly strange. Graham was growing in size, and the dragon-like features on his body were changing. Already nearing 8 foot tall, he was now around 10 feet. On his back, where his spikes would stick out from, a trail of fur had come out along till the tip of his tail. His hands were becoming less like a dragon but still similar to a dangerous beast as his fingers imitated more human claw-like hands. His face had come out more forward like a type of snout on a dog or a wolf, and fur wasn't just present on his back, but black fur also covered his forearms and more. While the changes in his body were occurring, a strange pulse of energy was being emptied outwards. It was so strong that the ground beneath was being cracked a bit more with each energy pulse. It was a telling sign, and perhaps unlike Quinn, it was a way to stop the others from attacking while his body was changing. This is what he was turning into last time. This is how he killed Helen. Nate said, shaking with fear. The others wanted to move, thinking that maybe attacking while it was turning was the best idea, but it really didn't seem like it would be the case. If Graham was dangerous before, he was a complete monster right now. Far stronger than any demon tier beast or a Dalki they had faced before. What is going on right now? Jean shouted. Leaders, I need an answer. Jim shouted out to the others behind him. Jean wasn't the only one shaken up by this. All of their eyes widened as they stood frozen on the spot, stunned. Finally, Vincent spoke. I know what you're thinking, but I have no clue why Dalki has the features of a werewolf. Hearing the words from Vincent had made many of the vampires shiver hearing that word, but out of all the vampires that were currently present, many of them weren't alive when the existence of werewolves was known. They knew of werewolves but hadn't seen one before. Vincent, just how bad is this? Sam asked. Everyone. Vincent shouted in response to that question. Some of you may have never faced a werewolf before, but I'm sure you know, and if you don't, I will state this as a reminder, if its claws or teeth scratch you, you will not be able to heal. Even with the use of blood. I don't know if it will be the same for the Dalki in front of us, but everyone should treat it like so. Only the second leader, Katori, can heal you if you are hurt, so we must keep her alive at all costs. Unable to heal. For some reason, I don't think that's going to be AF * King problem when he can destroy a whole castle with a single punch. Ratton shouted back. Logan, Linda, Dennis, we will stay back and look after Quinn. We will move him and try to find out what's wrong with him. Leave the fight up to the others. Sam ordered. Samantha, you go with them as well. Fex added. She wanted to argue back but chose not to. Those whose names had been called felt a little bad because they knew why they were being told to stay back. It was just another way of telling them that they were useless in the upcoming fight. Picking Quinn up, they quickly moved him and headed towards the ruins of the settlement. Around 6 of the vampire leaders now moved and formed an arrow formation and looked towards Graham. They didn't need to know he was done with his transformation because his eyes told them all. Now they were glowing yellow, and the next second he howled, shaking the whole world around them. Graham was a few hundred meters away, and yet his howl shook the hair on their heads and even ruffled their clothes. It was just too powerful. We can't wait any longer, fight back. Vincent ordered, and 3 groups of forces charged towards Graham. Everything was still currently being broadcasted live, and the situation was so tense that Bonnie had stopped reporting. The comment section was primarily silent as they watched this nail-biting moment. They could see that the group was charging forward in 3 separate forces. On the left side, there were the Blades, consisting of Ratton, Sill, Borden and Borden, who was now a 5-spiked Dalki. The second attack force consisted of the vampire forces consisting of Vincent, Jean, Katori, Jake, Lee, Dylan, Silver and Fex. Finally, there was the mixed group of Layla, Peter, Nate, Owen and Mona. None of them really had a plan for how they were going to approach this. The vampires were the most forward of the groups, and quickly just like before, Lee jumped to one side, throwing out his red string wrapping it around one of the arms. At the same time, Fex and Silver went to the other side, wrapping the string around the other arm. With all their strength, they pulled, trying to stop Graham from attacking them. Then charging at the front was Dylan, who wore a cape and could harden any material he touched and change its shape and form. Idiots! Graham snarled through his mouth. He moved his hand aimlessly, but it was so fast the others couldn't see what happened, but suddenly flying through the air were 3 arms. With a little pull, Graham had ripped them off the string still attached. It was almost as if there was no resistance at all, and now all of those in the 13th family were bleeding from their side. The next second, Graham swiped his hand not even close to Dylan. Having a bad feeling, he lifted his cap to protect himself. Still, his ability and powers were useless as the force of attack through the wind encased his cape and cut through his whole body diagonally, which fell on the ground after getting cut into 5 different parts. A vampire leader was killed just like that from a single swipe of Graham's hand. "Don't falter," Vincent shouted as he sped up ahead of everyone, running in quicker than the others upon seeing that there was an opening after the attack, but he wasn't alone, 2 more were by his side in the attack as well. A lightning bolt, Vincent's fist and Peter's hands that were glowing proceeded to whack Graham right in the stomach, all at the same time using as much power as they could. The strong force crashed into the same place. Graham's body didn't even move with the 3 attacks, and the others were unsure if they had even scratched him. Why do you look like that, boy?" Graham said, smiling at Vincent. It looked like Graham was about to make another attack, but before he could, a mud-like substance had landed on his arm, freezing him for a moment. The group of attackers split in a moment as they fell back, and now Peter's whites had come forward instead to make sure Graham couldn't chase after them. Still, the mud seemed to have done nothing, as Graham swung his arm towards the leg's tail that was coming at him, and for the first time ever, Peter had seen something that was sharper than Slicer's tail, because just like with the leader before, Graham sliced the tail into 5 parts, and before anyone could react, he once again swung his other hand, and Legs was gone. Ratton and Vorden were frozen about what to do next, and so were the rest of the vampires. They didn't have time to think, though, because now they only had time to react. "It's my turn." Graham smiled. He rushed forward towards the headless Hillston and clawed at its body 2 times. His hands sliced right through the bodies, and just like Legs, there was no coming back from that. The claws had ripped through the armor as if it was nothing, and now everyone could tell no matter what, if those claws attacked them, nothing could save them. Next, Graham leapt up in the air as the others couldn't help but wonder about who he was aiming for. "I won't let you try anything either," Graham said as he had grabbed onto Vorden, who was up above. He held on to his wings, and Graham's weight made them both come crashing down to the ground, breaking the area beneath him as he fell. The next second, digging his nails into the hard demon tier wings, Graham pulled and ripped them off from Vorden's body, causing black blood to spill everywhere. "Get off from my brother!" Vorden shouted and rushed forward. The anger filled him, but before he could even get close to Graham, he lifted his foot up and kicked him away. Vorden felt his chest crushing in on him, and his body sent flying back way off in the distance where no one could see him. We can't win." These were the only words that came out of Nate's mouth as he loosely held the shield. No, Lael shouted. "We took out the dragon. He's the only one left who we need to take out." Layla had transformed into her true Hanya form, and without hesitating any bit, she activated her sword as the symbol lit up. Jean and the other vampire leaders were using all of their blood powers and abilities they could towards Graham, but none seemed to be able to get through his scales or hide. Still, it was a distraction nonetheless as Layla charged forward. "You said you could cut through anything, so then cut through him and kill him." Layla screamed as she swung her sword down. She soon heard the sound of nothing and felt her sword hit nothing but air. "You're sh*T with that sword," Graham said as he easily dodged the sword attack and swung his hand down, ready to reach her face, until everyone heard a loud crash and something knocked his hand to the side. For a second, Graham's hand started to freeze, and because of this, he leapt back, away from the danger. Layla couldn't believe her eyes. "Aaron, you're finally back." However, Nate, seeing the new arrival, didn't know if this was a good thing at all, remembering what had happened last time. Channel Red Novel Chapter 1563, Losing Everyone. 2 people, Nate and Owen, who were currently present on the battlefield, had seen this type of scene once before when the group was in a desperate situation, when they felt like they were on their last legs. "Layla, get away from her!" Nate shouted. An emotion of joy had come over Layla when seeing Aaron, one that she hadn't felt in a while since the last time she saw her long-lost friend. She had completely forgotten about the details that Nate had told everyone. No, she wouldn't hurt me, right? She just stopped Graham's attack. Layla thought. Due to the sudden attack, Graham jumped back after seeing the strike on his hand turn it to ice. It was then, at that moment, hoping to stop him from following up with an attack, Erin threw her sword into the ground. She triggered the third active skill the next second and constructed a giant ice wall between them. Usually the wall of ice was used to reflect attacks similar to how Nate's shield did, but she was now using it more as a barrier. After an instant, she turned to look towards Layla, making the latter's body flinch because she could see Erin's glowing eyes. They were fierce, and for some reason, these eyes terrified Layla. The fear enveloped her body, freezing on the spot. No. Has she really gone over to the other side? As fear took over Layla, she felt a strong urge to activate the sword, which was something she would feel only in dangerous situations, and right now, as she stared at Erin, the sense of danger kept on increasing. The symbol on the sword began to glow, and the strange voices that would give her a different emotion, but one she was more used to, ran through her head. Immediately she felt like she could move once again as she gripped the sword tightly in her hand. I am not the one. Erin paused for a second as if she was taking a deep breath, that you should be fighting. The ice barrier soon went down, and Graham was standing on the other side. The group somehow managed to reorganize themselves for a second but now would have to face the monster known as Graham once more. At the moment, Vorden was getting healed from Katori. He was the only one who had sustained injuries that she could heal. Because Dylan had died from the single attack by getting sliced into pieces, Katori couldn't heal her. In the meantime, Syl stood at the end of the group because he was trying his best to recover his MC cells. Once he recovered, he could use his soul weapon to change the abilities he wanted as he wished. Switching between these abilities could also increase his MC cells, but they wouldn't restore what he had used. Since he had already selected some of the strongest abilities when going up against the dragon, his MC cells were already as high as they could be. Using his powers had drained him then, so it made no difference selecting new abilities. Right now, all he could do was wait. The first one to act was Erin, as she twisted the grip on her sword, making the blade turn a slight red. She swung down her sword, creating a tunnel of fire on the side of Graham. This blocked him from going after Katori and those around her. Quickly twisting the sword again, it now changed once more, and Erin rushed forward, fearlessly, to face off her opponent. Layla was about to go on after her, but she noticed that Erin was incredibly fast. The second Erin kicked off the ground, she had almost reached Graham. She wasn't quite as fast as Quinn, but her speed was closest to his. Your sword is annoying, Graham frowned. He could still feel the frost on his arm. After all, what Erin was using wasn't just a demon tier weapon, instead, it was a humanoid demon tier weapon. Graham dug his hands into the ground, cutting through it like butter, and at that moment, he also charged forward. The next second with a large slash, 5 giant holes ran deep into the ground as a fissure appeared. Each strike on the ground was large enough to cause one to fall through the hole. Jumping up, Erin tried her best to avoid falling into the hole, but that's when she noticed that Graham had leapt up after her as well. Pointing her sword towards Graham, she activated her first skill and an ice tunnel shot out from her sword. Swinging his arms and slashing through the air, Graham had sent out an attack. As soon as the ripples that were cut through the air had reached the ice tunnel, it broke through it completely, not even holding for a second. The attack continued towards Erin, and it looked like it was about to hit her. The ice tunnel lost out. Just how strong is this Dalki? Erin thought. Her ice tunnel had only lost out to one person in the past, and that was Laxmus when he used the blood beam attack, and now for the second time, her tunnel had failed her. Erin lifted her sword, hoping to block the attack, but seeing this, Layla got worried that the former's sword wouldn't be enough to stop the attack. However, Peter had chucked Nate up from the ground, and the latter held out the demon tier shield in between Erin and Graham. The strike hit the shield and absorbed the energy. The two soon fell to the ground, and the shield was lighting up with power once again. The shield, it worked. I was worried that Graham's power would be too strong for it. Nate thought maybe the ice tunnel had weakened Graham's attack's power a little. On the ground where Graham was about to land, both Vincent and Peter were right on the spot to hold him back, but the second the former landed, he charged forward across the field and reached out for the shield in Nate's hands. His large hands gripped the entire shield. "This is annoying," Graham said, as he used all the strength in his claw at the shield. The next second, the shield was being sliced from all 5 directions, and as it got destroyed, the blue glow on it began to fade away. Eventually, Graham had managed to close his hands, and the demon tier shield that so far had been able to withstand every attack was crushed. "Crap," Nate managed to say, as he was looking to get out of there. Erin ran around Nate and with her sword was planning to attack, but before she could even swing her sword fast enough, Graham opened his mouth wide and bit off Nate's head, separating it from the rest of the body. With a fling of its arm, he knocked Erin away into the far-off distance as the rest of Nate's body fell to the floor. "No!" Layla screamed at the top of her lungs, and many others felt their heart drop. Vincent and Peter had also caught up, and they grabbed the back of Graham's head. Clenching their fists, they punched Graham as many times as they could, but he soon grabbed both of them from behind and slammed them into the ground, causing them both to spit out blood. "Bring him back!" Layla shouted as she swung the sword again, but once more, Graham stepped back and moved far away, too fast for any of them to keep up. But this time, he had someone in his hands, and it was Mona. She knew when Graham was aiming to grab her. She could see his movements from the countless battles she had, but this battle was far above her abilities. "Don't worry about me, just kill this basta dash," Mona managed to say before her head too was bitten off by Graham, and as he gulped down, with a trail of blood sliding from the corner of his mouth, he howled. "Layla, listen to me, allow me to help you so we can take that thing down together." Lee shouted as he threw needles into her back, and his hands now controlled her body. For some reason, Lee noticed that Graham avoided the sword even after his latest transformation. In simple words, the sword was the only way right now which had the highest possibility to hold him back. "Another one." Quinn grunted through the pain. He killed another one. Quinn's face was boiling with anger as veins popped on his face. It was the first time that Sam had ever seen him like this, but Quinn's evolution wasn't complete yet, which meant quite possibly he was going to lose a few more of his friends, if not all. Channel Red Novel Chapter 1564, One by one the Vampire Settlement had their own fleet of ships and different types. They often used them to explore the planets in their solar system and in case there were other needs. However, the spaceships were never meant to be used in a war. The vampires never planned a full-scale evacuation because the settlement was their safe haven. If all of the vampires were to up and leave at once, then there wouldn't even be enough space for all of them. Thankfully though, there was enough room for them. The vampires might have found the ships cramped for them, but they realized that there was space for them, and that was because a lot of the vampires were dead. Those vampires had gone to the war and sacrificed themselves, while many died due to the infighting from before. At the moment, the person in charge of the evacuation of the vampires was the Royal Knight Mukka. Along with all the other ships, she wasn't too far away from the planet and was still watching with everyone as they waited for the result on the screen. "Why aren't you helping our king?" Since becoming a royal knight, Mukka didn't stay around her family for long, but now she was once again standing amongst them. She took out a coin and spun it, waiting for it to settle. It landed on tails. "You know, when we explain our family's abilities to others, we often explain it as luck, but that's just the simplest form of our ability. The truth is that it more equates to timing, which is why I have everyone in the family carry a totem with them. Something they can use to know whether luck in the fight is on their side or not. Our will doesn't even activate our ability, rather, it has its own will. However, lately, I feel like our ability is closer to foresight than anything." Mukka began to explain. "Perhaps it helps determine our chances. I spun this coin 100 times to land on heads and not once has it landed on tails. But this time, I have tossed it for the 101st time. This battle, if we join, we will die. Of course, the vampires weren't the only ones watching the live stream, and after seeing Graham transform and what he had done to everyone so far, there seemed to be anger amongst the viewers. What is Quinn doing? What are the vampire leaders doing? Some of them are just standing around there. Aren't they supposed to be the strongest? That's Oscar's sword as well, but the attack from that Dalki's claws still beat the power of the weapon. That's a demon tier weapon as well, so I don't think we could be doing better. I'm not saying that we can do better, but if these guys don't get their act together, we're going to lose. Quinn needs to join the fight as well. What is he doing? I agree, why the hell did he suddenly fall? He should have been prepared. Soon the comment section continued to blame a certain individual, the Vampire King and leader of the cursed faction, Quinn. They were blaming him for what looked a failure in defeating this one Dalki. The Dalki who could easily wipe all of them out. Are you reading all of this? Void said as the hate continued to pour in. Of course, Boney was seeing everything. They always had a separate computer that would scroll through the comments to see what people were thinking and the general reaction of viewers. Shut up. Bonnie eventually shouted, which was also played in the live stream. You hate Quinn, then you rely on him, and now you hate him because you relied on him. I understand you are not angry, you are just all reacting with anger right now. The reason why you guys are angry is that you're scared, and right now, the only one you think that can actually help us is Quinn. If that's that, then don't take your anger out on him, but show support. Screw you, we all know you were getting D from him. You think we didn't know? Oh yeah, she kissed him right and has always been right up his arse. Saying we're scared? We're just saying that if we were in the same position as them, we had the same power as them, we wouldn't have kept up this whole situation so badly. The most useless person in the world happened to get all this power and doesn't know what to do with it. Despite what Bonnie had just said, it seemed to backfire the whole situation. It was very easy to criticize when one wasn't in the driver's seat, and this situation couldn't be a better proof of it. Just carry on filming everything, Void, make sure they see the faces of the ones that fought for this damned world. They don't even care that people have died from them. Bonnie ordered. After seeing what had happened to the others so far, no one exactly was charging in on their own towards Graham. Peter and Vincent seemed to be quite hurt, but others couldn't help them because it was clear Graham was using the two as bait and would go after them next as his target. No longer were they trying to stop Graham, but it felt like they didn't want to be next. That was until Layla's body was attached by the set of strings that Lee controlled. Wait, this might actually be able to work. Layla thought. Layla's swordsmanship skills weren't the best, and the 13th family's true ability came when puppeteering. When activating the sword, the voices distracted her somewhat, and she knew that she wouldn't be able to use the sword's full power for a long time. But now with someone controlling me, I can let the powers of the sword take over. She thought. The next second, the marking on the sword started to glow in and out. Layla began to scream as if she had gone mad on the spot. Don't worry about me. She somehow managed to shout through her teeth. In doing so, Lee started to run forward while also being not too far behind her, controlling the set of strings. Graham, seeing someone had dared to come forward, did what he was doing so far and swung his arms out, creating a set of deadly air ripples using his claws that could seemingly cut through anything. However, at the right time, in a smooth motion and control, Layla's black sword moved in a complete circle, and in doing so, it met the claw strike head-on at each time. When it did, the claw ripples that would go travel the air, cutting through everything, slowly dissipated. I could tell there was something strange about that sword, Graham said as he saw this. Honestly, even Lee was surprised by the result. It was far better than he was expecting, and it allowed them all to charge in. With Layla close, Lee swung the blade in beautiful motions, thrusting forward and back, but Graham dodged all the strikes. Graham was large but fast in this form, but he had a strong intuition that if the sword touched him, even if on his claws, it would cause a problem. Seeing this, others felt like maybe they should go in and help. Ratton, Jean, all of them were trying to wait for the right opportunity, but as they all came in, annoyed Graham lifted his foot and slammed it on the ground, shaking the foundation of the ground itself as the area around them splintered, making Layla stumble on the ground for the next second. Seeing this, Owen quickly bolted himself over to her position, hoping to protect her, knowing that she might be the best chance at beating Graham. However, Graham ran straight past her. He was never targeting Layla in the first place. The next second, they all saw Graham's hand go directly through the 13th family's leader's chest. "You think I'm stupid like those other Dalki? It's clear that he is the actual one that caused a problem, and I'm happy to take you down one by one." "No!" Silver screamed as it looked like she was about to run over, but quickly her body was wrapped around in strings, and she was yanked back. "Sis, don't kill yourself, trust me, I know how you feel." Fex shouted as he pulled her to his side. "Trust me, I want to go over there right now. Believe me." "I do, but..." Fex stopped himself right there as his throat was choking up, but then something strange had begun to happen on the battlefield. The sky, the clouds above them, were turning red. The others, upon seeing this, wondered what was happening, but Fex knew. He's ready now," Fex said. Channel Red Novel Chapter 1565, The red sky having to undergo the evolution process right now was akin to torture, in more ways than one. First of all, the level of physical pain Quinn was experiencing was immense. As it drained the nest crystal's energy, the vampire felt that his body was on the verge of exploding, only a single tiny step away from his demise. Nevertheless, Quinn instinctively knew that it was doing so to push his body towards the next stage. Every part of his body, his cells, muscle fiber, bone structure, and so on was getting pulled apart and rearranged into a more optimal way. All of it got broken down and rebuilt from the ground up, only to be broken down again for the process to start all over again. And yet this wasn't the worst part of it. No, while the vampire had to endure this near-death experience, he was forced to watch the Dalki leader wreak havoc on the people on his side. Quinn felt helpless as he felt Graham go on a killing spree. Then while watching everything going on, Quinn could see that Nate had been killed. Quinn was stealing his resolve, barely able to reach out his hand in the direction that his friend had just lost his life. He wanted to reach him, even if he had to crawl on the ground, hoping to somehow rescue him. Alas, his system was unusable at this moment, fully focused on having him evolve, so he wasn't even able to summon anyone by his side. Quinn didn't have a plan whatsoever, his instincts just screamed at him that he had to kill that lizard bastard, no matter what. "You damn shitty familiar, come the F***ck out and make yourself useful. You never listen when I really need you. If you're not going to help me now, then leave my freaking body." Quinn cursed at Boneclaw. The familiar would often come out when he was angry, but now that his negative feelings had reached a peak, it stayed silent. The evolving vampire didn't think it could actually do something against the Dalki, but he might buy them some time, even if only for a second. "Arg!" Quinn grunted through the pain. Even in the state he was in, he somehow managed to shed tears. If he could see himself, he would have noticed those were tears of blood, which quickly dissipated as his evolution continued. At the same time, Sam, who had stayed by Quinn's side and had been watching over him this whole time, fell to his knees. As the one who had turned him, the young man felt it more than any other when his life had been extinguished. Nate, Quinn, did Nate, just, no. Sam couldn't even speak properly, unable to accept what had just happened to his dear friend. Despite being a talented high-level user, he had stuck around Sam and had helped him no matter what troubles the latter had found himself in. The two should have never been a match in normal circumstances, but that was just who Nate had been. Someone who hadn't had a bad bone in his body. I should have told him to come back. I should have told him to come back with us. Sam clenched his fists in anger and despair. For Quinn, it was a hard loss as well. Nate had been there close to the start of Quinn's journey. Someone who he had coincidentally met during the VR game. A special person who had just wanted to improve himself for fun. And yet, in time they had become good friends, someone that Quinn could rely on, and who had never let him down. Without asking anything in return, he had taught a lot of people in the cursed faction, earning him their respect. Worst of all, Quinn felt that if Nate had never met him, then perhaps he wouldn't have died today. The only reason he had joined the cursed faction was because of Quinn. Alas, the cursed faction leader didn't even get much time to grieve over one person, when the Dalki leader had claimed another victim. Mona was the next one to fall. Although not one of the original members of the cursed faction, the former Big Four leader had helped out humanity more than once. In a way, she felt like the most selfless person Quinn had ever met. For this reason, he had given her the Demon Tear amulet. It seemed a perfect fit given her own ability. The vampire hadn't even asked for it back, yet Mona had promised him of her own volition to take good care of it and return it. Now, she wouldn't get the chance to. Off in the distance, as her body fell to the ground, so did the amulet. He never expected to get it back this way. Quinn had always known that in this war, it would be impossible to not suffer any casualties. Nevertheless, nothing could prepare one for the loss of life of those close to oneself, and if something didn't happen he would lose them all. None of them were a match for Graham, who was even stronger now than when Quinn had faced him. Seeing how things were going, Quinn managed to grab the ground somewhat, and pulled his upper body up off. "Quinn, what are you doing? Just focus on getting through this," Sam managed to say as he wiped his face with his sleeve. Quinn blurted out, and straight out of his mouth a pile of blood started to fall. It continued to gush out pools of blood. Such a thing to come out, even for a vampire lord, was clearly dangerous. If it was a regular human they perhaps would have been dead. B-L-U-D. Quinn managed to say. Blood. It was the only word that came out, while the red liquid he seemed to crave still dripped out of his mouth. It was clear that Quinn couldn't speak and get everything out. Touching his side, Sam started to pour blood out from the flask, trying to get it to go into the leader's mouth, but something strange happened. When he tried to pour it, it started to float in the air around the Vampire King. It just stayed there in place, not going down or falling to the ground. Sam then noticed that the same thing was happening to the blood that was on the floor as well. More. Quinn managed to grunt out under duress. "You want more blood? You're going to kill that damn Graham, right? If that's what you need, I'll get you as much blood as you need," Sam promised, and got straight to work. "I'll get you all the blood, including my own, if it's to kill Graham." Immediately, the tactician called those that were in the cursed ship, and told them to come to the cursed faction planet with all the blood reserves they could get. It was close by, so it wouldn't take long. Since Quinn had told him to gather as many types of blood, Sam had been doing all of that anyway. After that, Sam contacted Muka, who was on board the ship. "I don't care how you do it, get as much blood as you can, whether it's vampire blood, human blood, or whatever," Sam ordered, and it sounded like they were soon to follow. There were no questions asked, as they knew it had to be important if it was at a time like this. There was one more place where there was plenty of blood that they could get. Dennis and the others quickly went with Samantha in search of more blood that would be in the castle. Everyone was quick to work. Fortunately, many of the vampire ships also had high amounts of human blood on board for all of them to feast on if need be. "We are ready, do you want us to deliver the blood to you?" Muka asked. Looking at Quinn, and the fact that the blood wasn't being drunk by him, it was clear that he required it for something else. His hair was starting to grow, but his skin was becoming tighter, similar to when he would become a blood sucker. But what was the reason? The answer seemed to be staring at him in the face, as the blood was rising in the air, into the sky. "Just drop the blood above the castle," Sam ordered. As strange as it sounded, now wasn't the time to question orders. Following his instructions, they did as they were told, and the blood was seen falling, only to rise again. All of it looked to be gathering around Quinn's location. At the same time, the others didn't even need to rush to the castle and find the blood because it was already moving on its own. When it reached the point above Quinn, it started to spread out, and formed clouds above them. Scarlet clouds soon filled the sky, turning the whole battlefield red. Then the blood armor that was on Quinn's body started to break down. It flew into the sky. The same happened to the blood gauntlet, leaving him only with his regular energy-draining gauntlet. Now that the others could see his body, they could see that all of Quinn's veins were beaming with bright red energy, too bright to be described as blood. One could see it lighten up, and then darken a little through the skin as Quinn breathed. His hair had grown to the point that it was running down his back up to his waist. Then, ultimately, his back could be seen wriggling until snapping out from them and nearly hitting Sam in the face were two large wings. At first there was nothing but bones, but filling up between was the bright red glow that looked to be running through Quinn's body. Finally, after all that time, Quinn could move as he picked himself up off the ground and stood up. His body looked the same as it did before, yet his face looked a bit older. The face of the young adult had aged, giving him the appearance of an adult, in his early 30s. The same markings that were on his back were also running through his chest. Quinn's evolution was complete, and he knew it as well. Congratulations, you have successfully evolved. Quest, become something beyond a vampire lord, has been completed. Evolution, Celestial Vampire Lord, new title, Ruler of Blood. Thanks for watching and subscribe my channel.